Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if talking to people you disagree with actually makes you more humble about your own ideas, especially when it comes to tricky topics like ethics and politics? Well, this new study dives deep into just that. So the big question here is whether having good conversations with people who think differently than you can make you more intellectually humble. Intellectual humility basically means knowing that you don't know everything and being open to the idea that you might be wrong. It is super important for getting along in our diverse world, but a lot of people believe that the best way to get more of it is through something called collaborative dialogue. Think of it as talking with others, where everyone is really trying to understand the truth together, not just win an argument. The researchers here call this the collaborative dialogue hypothesis. The idea is that when we only hang out with people who agree with us, we get stuck in our own little echo chambers and lose sight of how complex issues really are. But if we're encouraged to have honest, supportive talks with others, we'll start to see the limits of our own knowledge and appreciate other viewpoints. It sounds like a great plan, right? Now defining intellectual humility itself is tricky. The researchers explain it as recognizing your intellectual limitations. It can be about admitting your own ignorance or being open to learning from others. Measuring it is even harder. They use self-reports, which are like asking people how humble they think they are, but people might not always be honest because being humble is seen as a good thing. They also looked at behaviors like not claiming to know things you don't really know. To test this idea, the researchers designed 3 main studies using over 1,700 teenagers. Studies 1 and 2 were what they call quasi-experiments. This means they compared groups who naturally participated in something promoting collaborative dialogue, like an extracurricular ethics program, to similar students who didn't. They wanted to see if the students in the program showed more growth in intellectual humility over time. In Study 1, they looked at students involved in the National High School Ethics Bowl, an organization that encourages respectful and reasoned discussion of ethical and political issues. They compared students in the program to their peers who weren't involved over a 5-month period. They used surveys to measure intellectual humility and attitudes towards people with different views. And here is where it gets interesting. While students in the Ethics Bowl program did report being slightly more intellectually humble, initially they didn't actually show more growth in intellectual humility than the students who weren't involved. So the program seemed to attract already humble students, but didn't necessarily make them more humble over time. Study 2 aimed to build on this. They followed students in the Ethics Bowl for a longer period with more check-ins. They also used more specific measures of intellectual humility for ethics and politics, and even used text analysis to see if what students wrote reflected humility. Again, they found that students in the Ethics Bowl were a bit more interpersonally humble. That is, they were better at recognizing the other person's perspective. But crucially, and this is the key finding, there was still no significant difference in how much their intellectual humility grew compared to their peers. The hypothesis that collaborative dialogue boosts intellectual humility really wasn't holding up. They then decided to do a true experiment called Study 3. This meant they could randomly assign students to either participate in a workshop designed to foster collaborative dialogue about ethics or a regular class session. This is a stronger way to test for cause and effect because it removes the issue of students choosing to be in the program. After about an hour of collaborative dialogue, in the workshop participants were tested again. And guess what? Even right after the workshop, there was no significant increase in intellectual humility compared to those who had a normal class. It seems that even a focused hour of discussion didn't move the needle on their humility. So across 3 studies using different approaches and measures, the researchers consistently found that collaborative dialogue about ethics and politics didn't seem to increase intellectual humility. It is a pretty surprising result given how widely accepted this idea is. The researchers even point out that students who chose to join the Ethics Bowl were already a bit more humble, suggesting a selection effect, not a treatment effect. Of course, a good study acknowledges its limitations, and the researchers explored why their hypothesis might have failed. Maybe they didn't observe enough of the actual dialogue in Studies 1 and 2. Maybe the workshop in Study 3 was too short, or perhaps the measures they used weren't perfect. They also consider that maybe collaborative dialogue only works for certain kinds of topics, not necessarily ethics and politics, which can be very deeply held. This last point is really interesting. They speculate that maybe talking about facts or scientific ideas could increase humility. But when it comes to our core values and beliefs about how society should run, our defenses go up, and talking it through doesn't make us more humble. It might even make us more rigid. They even found a hint of this in Study 3, where a discussion about donating money might have slightly increased humility, but a discussion about lying to spare someone grief did not. This suggests our deeply held values might be a barrier to humility development through dialogue. Ultimately, these studies present a challenge to a very popular idea. It seems that simply encouraging dialogue about ethics and politics might not be the magic bullet for increasing intellectual humility that many hoped for. This doesn't mean dialogue isn't valuable for other reasons. It might boost curiosity or empathy. But when it comes to humility on these complex issues, we might need to look for different strategies. Now, what is my take on this? It is a really robust study designed with multiple studies and diverse measures strengthening the findings. The fact that they didn't find what they predicted is actually valuable because it pushes us to think more critically about how we cultivate important traits like intellectual humility. It shows that our intuitive ideas about how to change beliefs and attitudes aren't always right. The limitation about topics is super important. If our values are too tightly bound to our beliefs, then maybe direct discussion isn't the best path to opening our minds. Future research could honestly look at what kind of topics do foster humility through dialogue. Maybe science education or discussing personal learning experiences could be more fruitful. What do you all think about these findings? Does this surprise you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a like and subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more deep dives into the science of our minds. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next experiment. Thanks for watching.